I'm Jacob from the Sustainably Yours Homestead, where we're striving to live a little bit more sustainably each and every day, and we're inviting you to learn along with us. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down there, and then stay tuned because we're about to clean some cast iron skillets in a lye bath. I've got my chemistry shirt on because it's about to get sciencey up in here. We're gonna do some sodium hydroxide chemistry because through the magic of science, we're gonna clean some cast iron skillets. All right, I'm off in a corner of the property where the kids never come and play and stuff. That's gonna be important because what we're doing today, if you're not careful, it can get a little dangerous. We're going to be playing with some sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is a very caustic chemical. It can cause severe skin chemical burns on your skin. If you were to get it in your eye, you could go blind. So before we even get started, let's talk a little bit of safety. We're going to end up leaving our cast iron skillets in a bucket or a tub full of sodium hydroxide solution or lye. If you have kids or pets, you need to be extremely careful. You need to make sure that you have this someplace where it's not going to be accessible to them. And that's why I'm out here in the corner of the yard in kind of one of my mini junk piles. Because like I said, I know the kids never come out here, and there are going to be some other safety features that I add in here toward the end to make sure that the kids cannot get to this. I cannot stress that enough. If you have kids or pets, be extremely careful. Also, while you're working, you are going to need to make sure you have some good chemical resistant gloves. Probably you want gloves that are going to come up on your wrists just in case. And you must have some goggles or some glasses. The more coverage you can get over your eyes, the better. You don't want this stuff to splash up into your eyes. Alright, now that we've got that done, let's talk about what we're going to do. In a previous video, we cleaned up a couple of cast iron skillets just to kind of see if I could do it and see how they cooked and all that stuff. And we have really loved using those things. The problem is they're just too small. Can't really get a lot in them. So I've got a few more. I've got 1, 2, 3 more skillets and a Dutch oven out here that need a little bit of love and attention. They are not in great shape. This one is pretty big and heavy. This one's pretty rusted out. I hope I'm able to save these things. Some of these have markings on them, but I can't read them through the seasoning. I think once we get all of these cleaned up and down to bare metal, we'll be able to read them a little better. But when I cleaned up the last 2 skillets, I skipped the lye bath. I went straight to just getting rid of rust, skipped straight to using vinegar, and it worked pretty well. However, there were a couple of spots, just small spots, where I couldn't get all of the seasoning off of the skillets, and it bugged me. So this time around, I'm going to start things off with a sodium hydroxide bath. This sodium hydroxide is going to take away all of the seasoning on the skillet, all of the black part. It's not going to do a lot to the rust. From what I can gather, and I may be wrong on the chemistry, if you know more about it than I do, and I'm wrong, then correct me in the comments. I will not be offended, I promise. But lye is used in soap making to turn fats into soap and glycerol in a chemical reaction known as saponification. Now, knowing that the seasoning on the skillet comes from oil that has been heated up and it's polymerized, it does make sense to me, and I think what's probably happening is that the sodium hydroxide is turning the oils that formed the seasoning on the skillet into soap. And then that soap can then dissolve into the water that's in the solution, in the lye solution. And maybe not, maybe I'm totally off on this, but I kind of think that's what's going on. That's how the seasoning is being removed by the lye. So this rescue effort is going to take several steps, beginning with our lye bath. This is the stuff that I'm using. Make sure it needs to say 100% lye. Now I got this stuff at Wally World. It was in the craft department. I looked for a long time in the drain opener section. It wasn't there. It was in the craft aisle for soap making. So if you're having trouble finding this stuff, look in the craft aisle. And this is a 1 pound bottle. We're going to use this entire pound of sodium hydroxide. We're going to mix it into 5 gallons of water. So there's your ratio, 1 pound of lye to 5 gallons of water. And when you mix your solution, you want to make sure you put the water in first. When you add the sodium hydroxide, there's an immediate chemical reaction and it heats things up. So if you pour in your sodium hydroxide first and then start to pour in the water, there right at the beginning, there's just a little bit of water. There's not enough water there to absorb or take up all of the heat that's produced, and the water can like flash boil and splash up on you, and then you have chemical burns. So make sure you pour the water in first, and then we're going to slowly add the lye to that. Now, make sure you've got your safety glasses or goggles and some good chemical resistant gloves. I got the pink ones. And interestingly, these gloves actually work on the touch screen of my phone, so hey. All right, here's our lye. Break the seal. And it comes in a crystal form like a salt. I'm gonna sprinkle it in slowly. We're going to use the whole bottle, 1 pound. I'm going to stop right there and give it a stir. You can see it starting to kind of build up at the bottom, and now it's starting to dissolve. I don't know if you can see that actually. Let me see what it looks like on there. I think I can get a better shot of it. Ooh, I almost dropped my phone in there. All right. Okay, so that's a mean reflection. You can see where the water is beginning to turn cloudy. That's where it's starting to dissolve. And like I was saying, I'm gonna stop here and let some of this dissolve into the solution, because I don't want to pour a whole bunch in and then all of a sudden it starts to catch up dissolving and heats up too fast. So let's give it a gentle stir. Be very gentle. Don't splash it. By the way, we want to do this in a plastic or glass container. Sodium hydroxide will not react with iron, like the cast iron that we're going to use it for, but there are some metals like aluminum that it can react with, and it can produce some pretty noxious gases, or some pretty dangerous ones. But it will not react with plastic, so we're safe in this tub. Okay, it's hard to tell on the video because I'm getting reflection off the surface of the water, but it's cleared up, so that kind of tells me that the sodium hydroxide is pretty well dissolved. I don't see any more crystals really on the bottom. It took a little bit of stirring. Some of the crystals did try to clump together at the bottom, so I had to kind of crush those up and stir them on in. But we've got it done. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start adding the cast iron pieces. Now, like I said, the sodium hydroxide is not going to touch the rust. So I'm going to try to get some of this powdered rust out. That way I'm sure that the sodium hydroxide can come in contact with as much of the surface as possible. Okay, we're going to place this in. Actually, hold on. Let's set that up for a second. Just thought of something I need to do. Ooh, this will make it a lot better. I'm going to use some weed eater string. I'm just going to tie it through the loop in the handle. Alright, now lay this thing down gently, and I'll leave this end of the string hanging out. That way it's easy for me to retrieve when I'm finished, or when I want to look at the progress. Here's the second piece. I'm on a slope here, so the high end is on this way, this direction. There we go. And we'll get this one here. And it looks like the Dutch oven is going to have to be another soak. Now these are going to need to sit for possibly several days. The reaction is temperature dependent. The warmer it is, the faster the reaction is going to proceed. It probably also has to do with how much seasoning is left on the skillets and all that. But it may take up to several days. We'll come out and check these every so often, and I'll keep you updated on the progress. For now, we're going to put the lid on. Okay, here we are after, it's been about 48 hours or so in the drink. Unlike the vinegar bath, when I did the vinegar bath on those last couple of skillets, I let them sit for too long, and the vinegar reacts with the iron, and it did a lot of pitting and etching in the metal. You don't have to worry about that with this lye bath, since the lye doesn't react with the metal. You can almost leave these things in indefinitely, and the pH will keep the metal from rusting any further. Looking at this one, there's still some gunk on here. It could be some seasoning that's just thick on there that needs a little more time to remove. Or it's possible that if you get things that are cooked onto the pan and they cook for a really long time, then they can turn into just 100% carbon, and the lye is not going to do anything to the carbon. So for that, we'll just have to scrub, use a little elbow grease. I'm not sure what this is. Hold on one second. Let's get something and scrape at it for a second and see what happens. Oh yeah, that's coming off really easily, actually. But we are getting down to some bare metal in the places where there's not rust anyway. Cool beans, let's look at the others. And these are looking about the same. Inside of this one, there's still some crud there, but it's loosening for sure. This one, mostly rust on the inside. Lots of crud on the bottom. I would imagine that a lot of that is carbonized. But yeah, it's coming off there pretty easily. This one says made in you. Yeah, we're getting down to the markings in the skillet. Awesome. I'm gonna scrape as much of this off as I can, and then I think we're gonna drop them back in, maybe for another day or so. They're probably ready right now, but I don't have time to get to them. And like I said, you can leave them in the lye bath almost indefinitely, and the pH is gonna keep them from rusting any further. So I'm just gonna leave them in there. And I think the next time we open this up, we will be ready to move on to the next step in the process. There we go. All right, these have been sitting here long enough, so I think it's time we get them cleaned up, neutralize the sodium hydroxide, or get the sodium hydroxide cleaned off of them, and then get them ready for the next step, which is going to be getting rid of the rust using vinegar or acetic acid. Having these strings attached has been really useful when it comes to removing these from the lye bath. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this, and we want to rinse it off with copious amounts of water. place the lid back on there, take a look at the solution. You'll notice it looks all, well, I don't know if you'll notice, but it is now inky black. So we've definitely dissolved a lot of the oils. But I'm gonna carry this bucket over to the water hose and give these a really, really good rinse. And we wanna make sure we rinse these things off really well. Like I said, the water will not only rinse off the sodium hydroxide, but it will also act to help neutralize it. Now let's take a look and see what kind of job it did. When you're handling these after they've come out of the lye bath, you want to be careful. Notice I'm still wearing my gloves just in case there's still some residual sodium hydroxide left on the piece. Also, even if you do remove all of the sodium hydroxide, it may be a little bit slippery, so be careful not to drop it on your feet or whatever. It is lye. It's the stuff that's used to make soap, so it's a bit slippery. For the first pan, note that the rust is still there. The job of lye is not to get rid of the rust, it's to get rid of the seasoning that was on here. And it does look like it's done a good job of that. We're down to, you can see wherever there's not rust, there's bare metal. That's what we wanted. I do still see some black in around here. That may just be carbon. I think that might be where there was oil or grease that was just cooked until it was carbonized. For that, we're gonna use some steel wool and a little bit of elbow grease. Now I'm gonna scrub around on these just a little bit, just to see what it looks like. But keep in mind, we still have quite a ways to go with all of these pieces with vinegar and getting rid of the rust. Actually, I feel like this is probably going to take some of the rust off. Right here, I can see it. You can see it smearing all over the skillet. Around these edges, around the rim, and in these little indentations, those are some spots that I've noticed where it's really hard to get that seasoning out of there. That's why I wanted to use the sodium hydroxide bath this time around. Let me give this a good rinse and see what it looks like underneath all that. It definitely looks a lot better. We're down, wherever there's not rust, we did make it down to bare metal. That looks like it may have a little bit of seasoning or carbon on it. We'll see once we hit it with the vinegar a couple of times. See how it looks. And now I'm going to do the same to these other two pieces, and I'll see you back when I'm finished. These definitely look a lot better than they did. Let's start with, we have made it down to where we wanted to be. The lye bath definitely did its job. On skillet number 1 here, when we move on to the vinegar solution to get rid of rust, I'm gonna have my work cut out for me here. I mean, we have some surface rust and we're beginning to get some flash rusting from where I rinsed all of these things off. We're down to the metal. But there's a lot of etching and pitting, and it's not in great shape. I figure we will be able to get it into usable condition. I don't know if it's going to be anything I'll be proud of though. Bottom side, this one has no markings other than our number 5. Around the edges, lots of rust here too. And again, remember, the lye solution was not intended to get rid of rust, just the black seasoning and gunk that was on it. Skillet number 2, same story. The lye bath did its thing, but we do have a lot of rust that we're gonna have to cut through, and I don't know what this is gonna look like. I don't know how badly pitted and etched the metal is gonna be once we pull all that rust off of there. We may have to break out a sander or a grinder or something like that. Don't want to, may have to. Bottom side of this one, 7SK 8B made in USA, D2, and then whatever that is. An O maybe? I'm not sure. I don't know what any of these markings mean. If you're a cast iron person and you can help me out, that'd be awesome. Skillet number 3. Same old story, same old song and dance. Lots and lots of rust that we're gonna have to get rid of. On this one, around the edges, it's begun to pit really badly. Very rough. We'll see what we can do with it. And on the bottom we have made in the USA, down by the handle, number 8, 10 5/8 inch. There's the handle, if anybody recognizes that. And well, there we are, the end of step 1 of this cast iron restoration project. The next time we pick this up, I'll be trying to cut through some rust using some vinegar. We may break out the sander, possibly a grinder. I don't know, we'll see how it all turns out. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If so, please be sure to give us that thumbs up button and subscribe. If you know anything about this cast iron, if you can recognize any of those pieces, let me know down in the comments. And if you're interested in following along as we continue to try and turn our home into a homestead, then be sure to ring the notification bell so you'll know when to be back for more daily, sustainable living.